Hi, and welcome to the latest episode of Roll the Dice. Today's topic is multiple campaigns at once, both from a GM and a player perspective. I am Dave, your host. This is JK, Keith, and Keith. No relation. So, let's talk about game mastering multiple campaigns. It's a pain.
At once.
At once, yes, it's a pain. What are your thoughts before I give a GM perspective from this? Have any of you ever run multiple campaigns at one time?
I have not.
Well, no, I can't remember doing that. No, I've played plenty at the same time, but I can't say I've game mastered, unlike you, multiple at a time.
Well, let's talk about it from the player perspective, and then we can talk about it from the GM side.
Well,
What do you guys think?
For one thing, when I did it, I only had one group of friends that I was game mastering at a time. Whereas we have multiple groups.
Oh, yes.
Right? And some of us are in multiple groups, and some, but
I wonder, does that make it harder or easier to separate them?
As a player or as a GM?
As a GM.
Oh, it is much harder.
When there's different people.
I've got the Wednesday campaign free for friends that we've been doing for 30 years off and on, 40 years, something like that. The weekly game session. I've got the Friday night game for friends in Washington. I've got the Saturday game, superheroes game for friends in Chile. I've got the Sunday evil campaign with you boneheads. So those are the four that I'm running simultaneously. Plus, as a professional GM, roll the dice through startplaying.com. We have a Monday game, Tuesday game, a couple Thursday games, early Friday game, early Saturday game.
okay, I've totally lost track. And I know that on the Wednesday games, we don't always play the same game every week.
No.
Because we have a Tolus game, which is a Cipher
By Monte
system.
Cook Games.
And then one of us will run a numeric game. I think that's all that we do right now.
Gods of the Fall as well.
Oh, yeah, we were doing Gods
Gods of the Fall.
Yeah.
When Tolas came out, that took a back seat. And, the Numenera campaign is my campaign that Josh took over so I could concentrate on Tolas and some other things. So I'll be taking that one back up when he's done with this particular adventure module that he's going through.
And how long have we been running that?
2 years.
Oh, he's
Off
been
and
doing
on
that
for
for
2
2
years,
years. Yeah, for one campaign. We don't do it that often though, and then it's usually only 2 sessions at a time.
So the question is that if, of all those games you were running, if they all had the same player group, would that make it easier to tell them apart or harder?
It's still harder. And here's the problem that I have come up with. And there was a company out of the UK that has, I think it's called Forge or World Forge, where I could set up multiple campaigns in there, and I set up timelines on what I wanted to have happen, and I set up three campaigns running concurrently with each other that affected each other's timelines.
It's a mega campaign.
It was a mega campaign, and that lasted about 2 months, and then my brain leaked out of my head. It was horrible. And they had the same players. They were in the same environment. And it just, I can't do it.
Those games are still running, though.
Yes, they're still running, but I'm no longer trying to map them out and keep them in any kind of cohesive manner.
But they have overlapped.
They have, yes, and I have the characters do cameos in other, in the other sessions occasionally, because that helps. The player characters, when they're not there, and you're in an enclosed city environment, it's flavor, right? I know how those characters react. I know what kind of stories they've had before, so I can throw their antics into it and add more depth and flavor to a campaign. Now that's a positive for running multiple campaigns, because I can pull from the experiences of all of my players. I can fix something that I did wrong or didn't do well enough in one campaign, I can fix it in the other.
So you're saying with different player bases in each campaign, one, you can steal from the other campaigns a lot more readily. Does it help you switch gears having different people and different faces?
It does.
In
It
the
helps
campaigns.
keep it fresher.
Okay.
Right? Because if you're repeating the same thing over and over again, like I do with the professional GM stuff, it gets really old. It gets a little tedious. I mean, if I mention Tolus, what's the first thing that come to your guys' mind together?
The Evil Campaign.
Evil
The red warehouse.
the
Oh, yeah,
Red
Red
Warehouse.
There we go.
Red
Keep
Warehouse.
showing
14
up on
times.
there,
Yeah. If I ever have to run a campaign,
You
in
swore
that
you
red-
would never do it again.
and I'm not going to. I'm not going to. I'm not. Well, I might have to. But yeah, multiple campaigns are. It's exhausting on the DM. It's exhausting just wanting run game, right?
Yeah.
If you're going to run it well, there's all of the background stuff you have to do, or you have to read a module and memorize it so that you can put it out there. And as a professional GM, it's even worse because you really got to own that material to bring it alive for the players because they're paying you good money to run a game. The next segment will probably be our professional GM segment, but
Well, I think the Tola stuff is particularly impressive because not only do you have multiple campaigns, sometimes with the same players, like us,
Right.
but you, in at least one, it's a D&D 5e,
yep,
and the other is
Cipher
Cipher
system.
system. So not only are you running multiple campaigns in the same Tola setting, but different game systems.
in the same Tola setting. Yes.
How much of a challenge is that?
It's a brain teaser, especially if something happens to disrupt, like the Cipher system. If we miss a Wednesday, right? Then I've run D&D in the Tolus environment 3 or 4 or 5 times, and then I'm switching back 2 weeks later to go to the Cipher system. I'm no longer in the mode of Cipher system. I've got to switch that on again.
Right.
And I've caught myself having kind of a rough start, even though I know the Cipher system inside and out by Monte Cook Games. It's difficult to switch that gear.
Sure. Yeah. I get that. It can be difficult as a player, and as a player, you have I think it's a lot less of a gear switch.
Right.
And as a player, the switching gears is, I think it's also much less difficult because you're concentrating on one character.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as a GM, you have all the rest, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're moving from one character to a very, very different character, I think that makes it easier to switch those gears. And if then that campaign is a completely different genre,
Mm-hmm.
that helps also.
Oh, that's huge. Except as a GM trying to prep for that, you have to learn twice as much material at the same time. And then
Right.
that's going to lead into another segment that we'll have, which is GM prep time. I think, matter of fact, we might do that next. The amount of time that you're going to spend prepping for a game depends on 2 things: the amount of time available and the depth that you want to go into for your GMs that plays to your GM style, right? Some GMs only run modules, so you got to learn modules and run it. Some GMs have a free open world that we discussed in previous sessions, so you've got to take general notes and kind of flesh out a wider area of things. And then if you're running multiple campaigns, you might be doing, adventure module in one and open sandbox in another. You got to completely switch the way you run that game in between those. And now that I'm doing 4 campaigns a week plus the professional GM thing, I'm switching back and forth all the time between them, and it is exhausting.
Now,
I mean, I don't think I've ever worked as hard at a job as I have as a professional GM. I'm serious. It's crazy.
I'm not surprised.
I should be a CEO of a major Fortune 500 company for what I'm doing.
Do you think it would be easier if if all those campaigns, even if they were different genres, but they used the same basic system, like you ran some kind of generic system like Cypher or Savage Worlds or God help you, GURPS?
That's become much easier as many of the campaigns that I have are running through Cipher System.
Right.
By Monte Cook Games. It's an adaptive system, it's a storytelling system, and it puts most of the power in the player's hands. That takes a significant thing off of the GM. I don't have to do any rolls. All the players get to handle all the dice and have a good time rolling and empowering their characters to do more things. All I have to do is make stuff up. right?
I think as a player, it, switching between the different games, there's a couple challenges for me.
Mhm.
But talking about game systems, I think it's particularly challenging for me. From, we'll play the Tollus game on Wednesday in Cypher, and then now we're running the evil character campaign in Tollus in D&D 5e.
Right.
And I actually have a little bit of trouble shifting. Maybe it's
Okay.
because I've been playing Cypher now for so long.
Right.
But come Sunday, I'm like, okay, how does that work again?
Right.
And then, oh yeah, I now do spells in a very different way, so I
Mhm.
have to get back into the D&D way of thinking about spells.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Plus, we're trying to learn the D&D 5e environment when we're more familiar with 3.0 or 3.5. There's significant differences between the
There's
two.
you get in the
It's-
Wayback Machine.
Yeah, it's crazy. So yeah, switching between game systems is a bit of a rough.
even within
Change,
game
even for the
systems,
players.
though, I've had a couple Tollus games with similar-ish characters, and I have to remember, okay, does this character have that ability or this ability? Which one was it that had the initiative or
Mhm.
perception, right? So I have to re-familiarize myself before we start the game all over again with which powers this particular character has, right?
So some of this comes down to, from a GM standpoint, and I'm going to ask you about this here in a minute, taking notes. Technically, I should be taking notes on every session. If I were a good GM, I would be taking some copious notes. But I know myself, I would never look at them again. So I just work really hard at trying to remember what groups happened. And I put some of that back on the group by doing recaps at the beginning.
Well, we have people
But-
taking notes for us.
And that's why I'm going to ask Keith here, who's been very quiet this time.
Oh.
You've taken notes in several games, like Invisible Sun. You took a lot of group notes. You did
Oh, yeah.
you did that in the Cypher system in a couple of the games. Those are all completely different systems, right? D&D 5e. Is taking notes easier for you to switch between those games?
It doesn't really matter at that point because I'm just writing down story shit. So every single time that I'm writing down something, it always pertains to story.
Right.
And they tend to not be understandable by anybody else except for me.
I find them useful.
Yeah, I find them useful, absolutely. I rely on them as a GM because just like when you have a group with a lot of players, that's taxing on the GM and trying to keep track of everyone's character arcs and what everyone's special things that they want to do, right, in mind. That's really tough to do. So relying on the players to kind of sum up what happened last time keeps it alive and fresh.
So I'm going to touch on taking notes as a
Yeah.
GM.
Yeah.
I can't do it. I
It's
can't
tough.
take notes while I'm trying to GM.
It's tough.
It takes too much time away from
Mhm.
paying attention to what's going on in the group, trying to come up with what's going on next,
Yep.
keeping everything straight, all that. I can't do it.
It breaks the players out of the moment. If the GM has to stop and take a minute to write something,
Hold on a
there's
minute,
a minute
let
of
me
nothing.
record
So-
that. So
Right.
So I'm going to disagree with what you said about if you were a good GM,
Okay,
because
because it's hard to do.
because it's hard to do,
Yeah.
and not everybody can do it. Not everybody's a good note taker. Not everybody's a fast note taker.
In the realm of professional game masters now, I'm meeting a lot of professional game masters through Start Playing, and in this I'm finding out that a lot of them are taking notes. They're very successful with it, and I mean a lot of them.
Sure.
So there's
how do they do it?
they take the extra moment to jot down the notes there, or they go over it afterwards and they make the notes to remember.
See, that's it.
I can't do that because I can't remember things after the fact. I have to take those notes then.
Now, in your professional GM, since most of that is virtual, is it recorded?
No, because not everybody wants to have their sessions recorded, and it's privacy stuff, as
Sure.
well. They don't.
I
want
was going to say, if it's
record.
recorded, then you could go back through that and
Right.
take notes after the
But
fact.
think about how
But
much
that's a
time that
huge
takes.
time commitment.
Yeah, I mean, you got to go through the whole system again. If you just ran a 3 or 4 hour system,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't want to go through 3 or 4 hours to try and find the spots that you need.
I think if I was going to take notes, I think the most successful way for me to do it would be to jot down like bullet points, and I mean like 2 or 3 words
Yep.
at a time, and then right after the game go through and flesh them out.
Right.
And then I would never read them again.
Well, and that's true. You don't. You just hope that triggers it and locks it into your memory. Enough.
Right, that extra.
But I rely on the
Yeah.
players to bring it up. If it's important to the players, they'll want to bring it out. Your character's issue with flashbacks, right? I don't remember to do it all the time, but it's important to you, so you bring it up and you try and remind me.
Right. Which I forgot to do last time.
I know, and I did too.
I also find when I'm GMing, I remember a lot more about the game than when I'm playing.
Huh.
Because kind of all
You
of
had
it
to see the
funnels
long-
through me.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I know what you did, I know what you did, I know what you did.
Right.
When I'm playing, maybe I was focusing on my character sheet and trying to figure out what I wanted to do next, and I didn't catch what Keith did
Right.
in the game. That sort of thing.
You ran a game in the Tollus campaign. You took over one section for me running the Temple of the Rat God.
Yeah,
Right? How much prep time did you have to put into that?
a couple hours, maybe 2 or 3.
On reading the material and learning what it is? Well, what about all the time you did setting up the map and dynamic lighting?
That was another couple hours.
2 or 3 hours. So that's for a very short one-session run, and you've got 4 hours invested in it.
It was 2.
It was 2 sessions?
It was 2 sessions.
We can
Two
never
sessions,
do
yeah.
it one session.
I did it
Not
in one
that
session
efficient.
for one of my professional runs.
Yeah, but that's not us. We're
Yeah.
No, that's right.
You guys really were interested in the rats.
Very true. And I even threw more stuff at him.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't, in D&D, it wasn't challenging them at all. D&D is, the characters are so powerful. It's,
Oh yeah, because we did run that in Cypher.
Yep.
Yeah, because we did that was when we were doing the bleed through. Right.
and that was, I think that was before the Cypher book had come out, so I was still doing conversions from 5e.
Right.
Yeah,
Cypher.
D&D. Or to,
So that conversion added extra hours on top of stuff. And then in the virtual world, as a GM running multiple campaigns, there's a pro and a con. There's something that makes it easier, and there's something that makes it a lot harder. And that is having to make the maps and the handouts in the virtual environment. So not only do I have to know the material and have the material there, I have to replicate that material in the virtual environment so that the players can enjoy it and have it. So I've got to have handouts, I've got to have NPCs, monsters, and big nemesis characters in there, all fleshed out, mapped, and ready to go. The handouts alone, if you've got 3 or 4 handouts, that means you're probably going to have 6 or 7.
So for every hour of play, about how much time is prepped? Half hour?
I'd say a half hour to 40 minutes.
So multiply that times however many campaigns you're running. Right.
Yeah, it's a ridiculous amount. But my GM style is very different from the standard GM style.
There is no standard.
I
don't think there's a standard.
I disagree, and I would not have said that a year ago. I say it now because I am really in close contact with a lot of professional DMs, and there are specific styles that they have, and a lot of them I think are governed by the industry. We'll go into that another time on another segment.
Yeah, it's a different
But yeah, well, I had a
So,
thought there, but
what I'm hearing
Mhm.
is that if you want to run multiple campaigns, it's a full-time job.
Yeah, be prepared to do a lot of extra work.
Now, on the other hand,
Mhm.
if we had multiple games going, and it was just the 4 of us, let's say,
Mhm.
and we had 4 campaigns, and each one of us ran a different one, I think that would be much more
easier.
doable. Much
Yes,
easier.
Much easier.
Much easier.
Much
Yeah.
easier.
I
Well,
think because playing in multiple campaigns is easier
yeah,
than running multiple campaigns, and that's just the nature of it.
I think so. Yeah. Yeah, my style of GMing is for a general adventure, I'll have maybe 1 page of notes,
Mm-hmm.
right? Maybe a page and a half sometimes. For big games, maybe 3 or 4. But they're all bullet points, highlights. This. Remember this. Note. Remember this. Make sure this is in there. This is what this guy says, and that's it. Everything else, I rely on the players to fill in and enrich the game with their own ideas and performance.
We're at 20.
That
Yeah.
That's why nothing takes one session with us.
That's very true.
So we've hit our time limit.
Yep.
And so I think in the short takeaway from
Mhm.
this, running multiple campaigns, don't do it.
You can do it.
Don't do it.
Be prepared.
Don't do
Be
it.
prepared.
Just don't do
Well,
it.
most people don't. Most teams, groups out there, they might do one or two at a time.
Yeah, I don't think there's many people out there that
you
are as crazy
you
as
should
us
be
playing
prepared to put
multiples.
in a little extra effort and time preparing for each campaign.
A lot of extra effort. Don't listen to him.
There's a whole lot.
There's a whole lot of extra effort.
whole
that goes
lot
into
of
it.
extra.
Okay. Think of it this way: I put effort into game A, I put effort into game B, I put effort into game C. We're all running in the same kind of things, right? Now I'm going to link those guys in a way, so I've got to do X amount plus 20 on the first one, X amount plus 20 on the second, X amount plus 20 on the third. So now suddenly I've almost done half as much work as I have on the total.
It's an exponential
It's an
workload.
exponential workload.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that kill it?
Yeah,
I think
I
so.
think
That
so.
covers it. I mean, of course, we could talk about this probably for another hour, but why? I think we've heard it.
People
Half
have
the people
circles
say
at this
don't
point.
do it, and I say go give it a try.
What do you think, viewer, right?
What do you think?
Leave a comment, let us know if you've tried multiple campaigns at a time and how it went, and share your experience on that.
Yeah, we'll share your experiences on various forums. We'll share your comments on Twitter and Facebook and other places as well, and we'll get a whole conversation going about it. So, all right. Well, thank you for watching this latest webisode of Roll the Dice. Peace out.